Hello, everyone. So this is the second session for the same series of the sessions that we have started to teach you Python from scratch. You already know me. If you don't know me, I am Muhammad Adeen and I'm doing PhD from University College Dublin. So in my last session, we have already discussed about variables, data types, string operations, and list operations. We discussed only those operations that are common in list and strings. So today my goal will be to teach you about functions and operators. And then in the next session, we can move on to if-else statements. So just to give you a recap, we already know what is a variable. So it's nothing else. It's just a name for the memory space where your data is stored. And if you call the variable, it will return you the same data. And these are a bunch of rules for how you can name a variable. So the only rule that you need to remember is that you cannot start the name of the variable with a number. You can use an underscore in the name. You can use all the letters and all the numbers and just an underscore. You cannot use other special characters. And of course, variables are case sensitive. We have already discussed the data types, so I will not talk more about them. And so these are the operations that we talked about the string in the last session. The one that I have tick marked. Indexing, we talked about how to index a string, how to split a string based on some character, and how we can combine two strings. It's called concatenation. And similarly, we have talked about how you can count the number of items in a list. The function used for that is called length. How you can index or you can call upon the different items from a list. How you can combine two lists is called concatenation. So today we are going to extend the concept of list and string operations that we didn't talk about last time. So here I can see two operations from a string that is saying starts with and ends with. These two are very important operations because they let you understand if the string that you have is starting with a particular set of letters, yes or no. And similarly with ends with will tell you if it's ending with a particular set of letters that you input. So let me go to the screen. So you already know that how to move to Jupyter Notebook that we used last time. So I will go directly there. So we are at the screen sharing the Jupyter Notebook. So first what we need to do is input a string. Let's say I have a string. Okay, so use the same string that we used last time. Python tutorial 1.0. So I will run that so it saves the string. So let's say I want to see if the first two letters of the string are a particular letter that I have chosen. Let's say I choose a letter. Let's say I choose PY. I'll run it. So now I want to know if my input string A starts with the letters that I have inputted in letter B. So the same thing you just have to do is A dot, and you know already the function. You just say starts with, and you put the variable here B, and you run. So it says false. We already know that false is a Boolean. So this function starts with or ends with will return your boolean, true or false. So here we have been returned false because Python is case sensitive. So this string should be case sensitive. So we entered py, p is in small letter, small case letter. But here the p is a capital letter. So that's why. So if I change b, let's say I change b to like this. So now I run this statement, I get true. So let's say this, I remove this one so you can understand what happened here. So similarly, to use end with statement, so let's say I introduce a new letter, let's say new variable e. So let's say I already know that this string should end with 1.0, and I just want to check if it will happen or not. So I just have to do this ends with, just to put the variable here. So I get a true. So it means it ends with 1. This string a ends with 1.0. Okay, so now we move back to our slides. So now we have discussed these two functions. So let's move ahead. So now we are looking at different properties or different operations that we can do with our list. These are extend, sort, or reverse, and copy. There are a lot of functions or operations available. I'm just giving you a few examples so you can understand the usage and you can pretty much understand how to apply these operations in the programming. And the usage is the same. If you learn a few, you can do the rest of them, you can do by yourself. Let's move to the Python tab. So let me introduce a list here. So let's say my list is comprised of these variables that I already have. These are a, comma, b, comma, e, comma, let's say I put here true, false, a bunch of numbers. So this is my list. So what I want to do here is I want to learn some of list operations that are possible. So first of the list operation that we saw was extend. So if you go by definition of extend, it means you are extending something. And so let's say we want to extend this list. So I create a new list, L1, and just a random list, so 6.5, 1, false. Let's say this is my list. Now I want to extend the list L, and I want to enter these items into this list L at the end of the list. So that's why I will use extend. So if I want to combine two lists, so combination or extension is the same, but if I use combination of two lists, if I combine two lists, it will return me a list that I need to store in another variable. But if I extend a list, I don't need to use another variable. So I'm using the same variable, but I'm extending the number of items in that list. So how do I do it? I just say L dot extend, and I just put my list that I want to extend here, L1. And I say run. Okay, I forgot this one, B. Yeah, so it worked. So let's say now I print my list. So you see, my list was the last item on the list L was 5.5, this letter, 5.5, this item. And after that, the first item of L1 is 5.0, which you can see here 5.0, and then the list continues. Another thing that you want to note here is that I have entered 1.0, 5.0, which is an integer. But why is it showing me like this, 1.0 and 5.0? It's because I have introduced a decimal place here. So Python interpreter thinks it's a float. It's not an integer. So that is why it gives me 1.0. And if here you see this, there is no decimal here. So this is only 1, and it's printed as 1 only. So it means it's an integer. But 5.0 is a float. It's not an integer. So you need to be very sure when you're programming these things. So another operation that we saw was reverse. What does it do? It just reverse the order of the list. So it will put false on the first, then you will see 1 on the second, 6.5, and so it will just reverse the order. So let's just say print L dot reverse something went wrong. Yeah, something went wrong. I don't know. So I'm receiving this error. It says none. Let's try something else. Let's say so. Let's try to input a list with numbers, with a bunch of numbers. So this is my list now. Let's see. If something is wrong with the interpreter, because L dot reverse is supposed to print the reverse of this list. Somehow it's not working. Or let's see if I try like this. Dot this works. And print L. Okay, so now it's reversed. So you see the order is reversed. So now you see 10, 5, 3, 2, 1. The order was like 1, 2, 3, 5, 10. If I run this again, now I run this. So again, the order is reversed. So let's say if I have this one, now I run this. Yeah. So now the order is reversed. So I don't know why it doesn't work in the print statement. Well, anyways, so you know the usage of reverse. So what it did was it went to the list L and it reversed the order of the list. So this was my list. This was, yeah. Okay. Yeah, this one. Sorry, this was my list. So here it says A, B, E, and we know A, B, E is A is this, B is this, and E is this. So it reversed the order. So this is your A, this is your B, and this is your E, and you can see the order is reversed. So you have true, then you have false, 1.0, 5.0, 5.5. So your order of the list is reversed. So if I again run this and then I run this, so now again it reversed the order. So that's how you can use the reverse function. Then what we have is copy. Another operation that you can do with list is copy. It means you can create a copy of the list. So you need to specify another variable name. So let's say I say this is L copy, and I say L dot copy. So what it does is it makes a copy of the same list and returns it, and it will store it to a new variable named L copy. So now if I say print L copy, so you see this and this is the same. Okay, at this stage you might not be able to see the difference, like, well, why do I need to use this dot copy function? Because you can do the same thing with, let's say, L2 copy equals L, and then you can print L2 copy. So you see it's basically the same, there is no difference in it. But this becomes very important, this function dot copy becomes very important when you move on, when we move towards advanced level programming. It will be really important for us to use this function instead of just doing this. So that's pretty much that I wanted to teach you about the list operations. So we head back towards our presentation. Oh, let me see this. Yep. Okay, so we are here now. So our next step is to go towards functions in Python. Functions, they exist in any programming language. What is the definition? By definition, is just a group of statements that are executed only when you call it. So a function will have a name, and it will do a bunch of things for you. It will do a number of things that have been listed in the function. So a function, you can think of it as a box. You input that box with something, and it gives you some output by processing that input. A function may or may not take any input. So so for example, I have shown you examples of, let's say I have shown you the example of copy. Copy is a function that inputs nothing, but it returns something, a copy of the same thing. So you might have functions that take no inputs, or you might have functions that take some inputs. So why do we need functions? So let's say you're writing a code that does a bunch of things, and you need to do some, or let's say you need to calculate something again and again based on the input from the user. So you won't feel it very easy to write those line of codes again and again. So to avoid doing that, you just create a function and you call that function again and again, how many times you want. So the code is written only once, but you're calling it again and again. And another benefit is that when you're writing a code, when you store that code in the RAM, so you will have less number of lines to be executed. You will not have multiple copies of the same thing. You will only have this code only once, and then you can execute the same statements again and again by calling the function. So we can have two kinds of functions. They can be user-defined or built-in functions. So user-defined functions are basically defined by the user. Whatever you write and you call it a function is called a user-defined function. At this stage, we will not talk about user-defined functions. We will move on towards the function that come built in with Python. So these are called built-in functions that are provided by Python to you. For example, we have seen these examples, these functions: extend, sort, reverse, starts with, end with. These are all functions provided by Python. You don't need to write them again and again. You just use them. So we will look at some of the examples from Python that are given by Python to you. So here are some examples. You can see you can have a help function, print. So ABS means absolute of a number. So range, you have range function. We will go through all these functions now. So let me move towards my Python interpreter. So now here we have seen that the first function that we were introduced with is help. Help is a function provided by Python that lets you understand what other functions are doing. So let's say we have here, we have seen this function print again and again. I write this function print. So let's say we ask Python, what does this function do, print? Python should be able to tell me. So here is the help on this function. You see, it always tells you a built-in function, print. So okay, this is module. So this function is placed in module called built-ins. So at this stage, we will not talk about modules. So you just try to understand that print is a function written somewhere in the Python libraries, and you want to understand what does it do. You don't concern where it is written or something. You just want to understand what does it do. So the first thing you can see here is the input, and it says value. So whatever I write here inside print, here L copy or L2 copy is the value that is being passed to this variable. So value is a variable, and this variable is local to this function. Okay. Then you have another variable called separator. So SEP means separator, and it has a default value which is just a space. Then you have another variable, how you want to end your string, the input string that you are given to this print function, how you want to end it. So it automatically adds a \n. Those of you who already know all programming, they know that this \n function or is string. This \n string is nothing but it just adds a new line after the Python is done printing your variable. So it will just add a new line there, nothing else. Okay, at this stage, we don't need to discuss about these. So one thing that you should know is that a function takes a bunch of inputs. These inputs in programming language, we call them as arguments. So everything here, written here inside the brackets, is an argument. This value is an argument. This separator is an argument. So in Python, we have two types of arguments. Or let's say we have three, but okay, I will go with two. So this thing here, value, which has no default data to it, like this separator has a default value. This end has a default value, this variable, but this variable value has no input value. So it's called positional argument. Without it, print function is doing nothing for you. So let's say if I write here print, I don't input anything. It does nothing for you. Basically what it does is it just print the new line. It didn't print anything, just a new line. Because it's by default it's new line. So let's say if I say print and I say n equals this. So you see, it didn't even print the new line now because I changed the values and unless I input the value, it will do nothing. So that's why this function, this variable will be called as a positional argument, not a, sorry. So this will be called a positional argument, this value here. And this thing here, this thing, SCP, which is basically a separator. You can see here, the definition is given here. SCP is a string inserted between values. What does it mean? It means that if I'm giving more than one input to this function print, it will join that input and it will add something between those two inputs. That something is this string SCP. You can choose how you want to do it. So let's say I say here print. We already have these variables A and B. So print A and B and run. So what does it do? It prints Python tutorial 1.0. It adds a space between these two, and then it prints py. So this print function is very good. It's magical because it can concatenate the input. Here you didn't tell it anything. You just inputted A and B, but it concatenated the two inputs for you. So let's say if I say here, comma, and I say my separator is nothing. So basically, this thing means nothing. And then I run. So you see, now there is no space between the two strings. Okay. So that's how you can learn about different functions in Python. So let's just say I have another function that I want to know about. As we have seen, there is a function called ABS. So let's ask Python about this function, ABS. Right? So here it tells you it takes in a positional argument and it returns you the absolute value of that argument. You know, absolute value is nothing, just a positive sign. So let's say if I say ABS -1 or -14, so the answer is +14. So it's nothing else. So that's how you can learn about different functions that Python provides you. You just need to call help function and give the function name as an argument, and you will understand how does it work. There is another function built in that comes built in Python. It's called inputs. So let's say we talk about this. We ask Python, what does it do? So I don't know what does it say, but basically what it does is that it inputs anything given by the user. So let's say you're making a calculator that only adds numbers. So let's say you make a calculator that only adds two numbers. You have to ask the user to input those two numbers, and then you perform summation of those two numbers, and then you result as the output of those numbers. How do you write that? So you need variables, yeah. So let's say my first variable is A, and I write this function input. Here I have to input the string. So let's say I ask the user enter first number, and I put the sign equal to, and then I ask the user for the second number. Okay. So I run this. Now it asks me for the first number. Let's say first number is this. Sorry, I forgot. Yeah, run this. Okay, we have lost the connection with the server. I will just refresh the page. Okay, so run it. Okay, I will have to come here again because it's just lost. So let's input this. Yeah. So let's say my first number is anything, Then it's asking me for a second number. Okay, so now we have inputted two numbers. You can even check those numbers. Maybe. Okay, so it actually, yeah, it printed A and then it printed B. So you see only B here. So if I do this and I do this, so yeah, so now you see A and B. So what happens here is that you see that there are quotes on these numbers. You see this quotation mark? So it means it's a string. It's not a number. For Python, it's not a number. It's just a string. So whatever you input, Python will take it as a string. It will not consider it as a number. You need to tell it if it's a number or a string. So now we are making a calculator. We know that the user will only input integers. There is a function in Python that will help you convert the string into an integer. And it's simply called int. So what I need to do is I would say convert a variable a to an integer. And simply I say convert my variable b to an integer. And then I need to present the user with some output. I will say print the sum of two numbers is, so you know that Python can concatenate two strings and it can easily convert a number to a string. You don't need to give a string actually. So here I can say just a plus b. And I run this. And you see, we got the result. The sum of the number is this. Now what you need to do is you need to combine everything in one block. So what I do here is this. I copy this. I paste everything here. I will delete these boxes. So you know already how this works. So let's say we make a user-defined function. For that, what you need to do is that you just say def. You say def a space. Then you give the name to a function. So let's say I give the name add because it adds two numbers. And then I need to enter these two brackets. And then I need to enter this colon mark. And everything after that will be indented by one tab. So like this. Indentation is very important in Python. So whenever you are defining a function, you indent everything. And it's best practice that you add a space after the definition of a function. So So what happens here is that this function is user defined. Its name is add. It doesn't input anything. When it's called, it will ask the user to input a number and it will generate some number based on that. So you see, when I run this thing, nothing happened. Why? Because it's a function. So what happened is that it loaded this function in the memory, but it didn't execute these statements. It will execute when I call this function. So let's call this function. So you see now it's executing. So that's how you make user-defined functions and how you use them. So let's say if I ask Python about this one. So Python doesn't know what is this because we didn't provide it with any information on this function. So Python doesn't know what is it. So you need to provide it with any information that we will not discuss here. So now you know what are built-in functions and what are user-defined functions. So the next thing that I want to talk about is operators in Python. So let's move towards So we are here. So this is the thing that I want to tell you. What are operators in Python? Operators are nothing. They are just a bunch of symbols that perform something for some tasks for you. So operators, you can divide them into three categories based on their function. So you can have, they can return you either Boolean operation, Boolean expression, or an operator can assign the value to a variable, or they can do some mathematical operations on integers or floats. So I just show you a few of the operators that are really necessary for us at this stage. There are many more that you can learn by yourself if you want. So first of them is assignment operator that you have already been seeing. So what we do is we write the name of the variable on the left and we give the data on the right. So whatever on the right is stored in the memory and that is assigned to the whatever is on the left. Then you have comparison operator. So what it does is it compares data. So anything that is comparable, numbers are comparable. Strings are comparable as well because they are a combination of letters. So you can understand if the two strings contain the same letters or not. So they are as well comparable. So the first operator here is you have to enter two equal sign, not one. If you enter one equal sign, it's just assignment. If you enter two equal sign, it means you are comparing anything on the left and right. So you are comparing two numbers, two floats, two integers, two data types, anything you can have. So the comparison operator will output a Boolean. It won't, it will give you an output as a Boolean. So it will either tell you it's true or not, it's true or false. So if two things that you're comparing are equal, it's true, it will tell you true. If it's not, it will tell you false. So the other operator, you are very familiar with this one, is just less than. And this one is greater than. So they will only work on numbers. You cannot say one string is less than or greater than another string. Yeah, it's illogical. These two are the same. You know them already. And this operator here, it means not equal to. So you can compare two strings even with this one because you need to know if two strings are same or not. The other category is arithmetic operators. So anybody knows the first three. So it's just addition, subtraction, and multiplication of the numbers. This one everybody knows is a division. This one gives you a modulus of the two numbers. This one here is called exponent. So if you have two stars, if you have one star, it's multiplication. If you have two stars, it is exponent. So let's say I say 1 double exponent, then I say 10. So it means 1 raised to power 10. And this number here, double, it will give you 1 double exponent, then I say 10. So it means 1 raised to power 10. And this number here, double division, it will give you 1 double exponent, then I say 10. So it means 1 double division, it will give you 1 double exponent, then I say 10. So it means 1 double division, it will give you 1 double exponent, then I say 10. So it means 1 double division, it will give you 1 double exponent, then I say 10. So it means 1 double division, it will give you 1 double exponent, then I say 10. So it means 1 double division, it will give you 1 double exponent, then I say 10. So it means 1 double division, it will give you 1 double exponent, then I say 10. So it means 1 double division, it will give you 1 double exponent, then I say 10. So it means 1 double division, it will give you 1 double exponent, then I say 10. So it means 1 double division, it will give you 1 double exponent, then I say 10. So it means 1 double division, it will give you 1 double exponent, then the floor. So it will move the number to the left. So if you divide two numbers, you get you get a quotient and you get a remainder. Maybe if you divide two numbers and it results, the quotient results in a decimal point. So it's a float. If you have a decimal, it's a float. It's not an integer. So it will move that number towards left. So let's say if I have 10.5, it will give me 10. It will move towards the left. Then you have logical operators. They are simple. They are called gates. And if you are an engineer, you know them. They are called gates, and or not. What they do is they just combine logic. So they will work. They will operate on Boolean expressions. So something on the left and the right should be Boolean. So if you in AND gate you can only have true only if you have true on both sides. In the OR gate you can have false only if you have false on the both sides. All the other outputs will be true. In the NOT gate you will have the reverse. So if the logic is resulting you to true, it will convert that logic to false. That's very simple. Let's move towards Python. So let's input two numbers. Or we already have two numbers, yeah? This here. So my number A is 12 and my number B is 15. So I want to see if the number A is equal to B or not. I don't know beforehand. I want to see. So I can use this expression and it results me as a false, that A is not equal to B. So we can even ask if A is less than B. Yes, A is less than B. You can see 12 is less than 15. So definitely A is not greater than B. You already know that. So you can use another operator. Let's say if I say A, let's say this number B. Okay, it resulted in 0. Why? Because 15 is a bigger number than 12, and division of 12 with 15 will result in what? Let's see. A divided by B. So it resulted in this number, 0.58 is a float. So what it does, this symbol, what does it do? It just moves the number to the left. So you already have 0 here. That's how this works, these operators. So how do you check the AND operator? So let's say I have a new number, C equals 10. So I will remove this box so it can move up. So we have a new number C. So let's check AND condition. So I'm saying, tell me if A is less than B and C is less than B as well. And on this, the answer is true. Because we already know that the value of A is 12 and B is 15. So C is 10, so 10 is definitely less than B. So this will result in a true and this will result in a true. And the AND of the true is true as well, of course. So let's say if I change this, I put a B here, I put a C here. So we have false because B is not less than C. A is definitely less than B, but B is greater than C. So this will result in a false. So you have, as a result, you have false. What if I put an OR gate here? Then I will see true because OR gate results in true if one of the inputs is true. So let's try NOT gate. So I say not A is less than B. What happened here? So we already know that A is less than B, but then I put a not gate. So this thing resulted in true, and not gate converted the true to false. So we saw here false. So that's how you can learn operators. You can even search Python for more operators. So the last thing is that you need to know, you can combine operators. The arithmetic operators can be combined with the assignment operator. So you know that equal to is assignment operator. And you know that plus, minus, multiply, divide are arithmetic operators. How do we combine them? Let's say I want to say that, okay, so first let me see what is A. Yep. So A is this number. I want to assign a new number to the same variable A, but I want to do some mathematical operation on the same number that was stored there before. Okay, one would say that you can do it like this. A plus B, some number. No, what is A? So you see A is changed. Okay, that is fine. But there is another way to do it that can save you a lot of typing. What you need to do is you remove this letter A, you remove this operator as well. You put this operator here and you run it. And now you say A. So you get another number. So remember, A was not this number, but A was a combination of summation of A and B that we did before. Okay, so maybe we can introduce new numbers so that you're not confused. Let's say A is 12, B is 10, and C is 15. Okay, in Python, you cannot enter a comma between variables, but you can enter this semicolon. Okay, now it works. So I remove everything. So now I say that A, multiply A with B. What does this statement mean? It means multiply A with B and add the result to A, or assign it to A. Yeah, it's more specific. So multiply A and B and assign it to A. One way of saying this is this. And yeah, print it. So you see, okay, it did it twice. That's why I see this. So let me run this one. So you see 120. So 12 into 10 is 120. And it was assigned to A. So now the value of A is 120. It's not 12 anymore. It's 120. So, but the other way definitely is this one. A equals A star B. And then you can see A. So 1200 because before A was 120. So you can play around and learn different operators. And when you are easy with programming, you will find that this notation is much more convenient than using this one. So you can see this. Yeah. Okay. So this is pretty much that I wanted to show you today. Today we learned a lot about functions and operators. So we learned about built-in functions and operators. I try to show you all of them, but You can practice other functions that are here. So you can search for them. So let's say we didn't see what does range do. So let me go back to, so just type here help and type range and run it. So what does it do? It returns an object that produces a sequence of integers from start to stop. So it produces numbers in a successive order, you see. So it produces one number I that you give here, and then it adds 1 to that number and keeps on going till j minus 1. So I had already told you about this, that in Python, we never go to the last number, but we go to the last number minus 1. So that's how it works. So let's say I say produce a range of numbers from 1 to 10. What will happen is that it will start from 1 and it will go till 9. It will not go to 10. Okay, so to see the output, you really need to use the statement print. Mhm. Come on, I'm missing this one. Okay, yeah, so you see there's a list of numbers generated from 1 to 9. So why didn't it print the first time? So if I directly say print the range of the numbers, it prints this range 1 to 10, but it doesn't print these numbers. What happens is that this function range, or is a class object, it returns you with a sequence of numbers that are countable. But if you really want to print that sequence of numbers, you need to convert that to a list before printing it. So if you want to print the numbers from the range function, you always need to call upon the list. So what does this do? This list function will convert whatever is provided to a list. So this is a list. We can even ask Python the help on list. Sorry, I should type here list. Come on. Okay, again lost the connection. I will try to come back. Okay, let's go back to our window. So using the help function, you can try to learn what do all of these functions do. If you have some queries, or if you don't feel comfortable using this help function, you can always ask Google. Okay, one of the students asked me if he can read books, or what should he do to learn Python. I mean, so his question was like this: how much time should I dedicate daily to learn Python? I will never suggest you to dedicate a specific time slot. What you have to do is dedicate a goal for you. Try to make goals that you want to achieve. So let's say today I have taught you about functions and operators. So you can make a goal that today I'm sitting here, I want to learn about functions in Python. Next day you can make a goal that I want to learn about operators. So what you do is that you only look for all the possibilities that you can do just using operators. Nothing else. No function is used there, just use operators and try to learn them. So similarly, if you're working on functions, just use functions and try to learn them. That is the best way of learning. So I will just try to give you more input. For example, you go to Google. So one of my students asked me that he wants to learn Python from a book. What book should he read? I will never recommend you any book. As soon as any book that you think is providing you easily with the stuff that you need to learn, is very easy for you to grasp that thing from that book, go for it. Just read whatever you find. The really important thing is that you get yourself acquainted with the Python documentation, because the books are old, but the Python documentation available on their website is updated daily, or more often when they introduce something new, they update that documentation. And most of the times when you are doing programming as a developer, you will be referring to the documentation, not to the books. So try to make a habit, just make a habit and try to learn things from the Python documentations. So let's say I go here, I ask built-in, I want to learn built-in functions today. So I say built-in function in Python. I go here. So here is the documentation provided by Python. You can see here. So you are looking for the most latest one. So this is 3.8.3 is the most latest. Python 2 is obsolete, so you don't want to go there. So now you want to go to this link here, documentation from Python. So here it tells you the Python interpreter has a number of functions and types built into it that are always available. They are providing a list here of all the functions that are available in Python already built in, and you can use them. And you can learn here how to use these functions. For example, I don't know about, I don't know, let's say, so I want to learn a function from here. Let's say length. I don't know what does it do. I just go to length and I see what does it do. It says return the length or the number of the items of an object. So if you have a string, it means it will return you the length of the string. So string is nothing but just a combination of letters. So it can count the letters in the string and it can tell you how many letters are there. Or if you input a list, it will just count the items in the list and it will tell you. Similarly, it works on tuples as well, or it can also work on the range function as well. So that's what you need to know. You don't need to go much into details. You just need to know this thing. So for example, you don't know what does max function do. So it tells you, it just returns you the largest item in. So whenever it says an iterable or the largest of two or more arguments. So what is iterable? Iterable is anything that you can count. So iterable is a string, is a list, is a tuple, and also dictionaries are iterable. But numbers are never iterable. So you cannot input one number and you can expect a different answer. So if you input only one number, that number is only maximum. So if you want to see the maximum of 3 or 4 numbers, you can enter them like this. So you can enter number 1 here, number 2, number 3, number 4 with a comma. Or you can just convert those numbers to a list and just pass the list. That list is iterable for you, so it can easily understand. Similarly here, it tells you about the minimum function What does it do? It will just print the minimum of the input. So that's how you can learn from the Python documentation. I recommend that you learn from the Python documentation instead of the books, so that in the future, when we move towards higher level programming, when we move towards being a developer, you will never be lost in a book. So you will know exactly what to look for and where to look for. That is the key towards being a good programmer. You should know. It's not a shame that you don't know anything. No, you should know where you have to find your solution and how you present your questions. If you ask Google, okay, give me a program on a calculator, there are so many codes that are presented there people can give you, but nobody can tell you how it works. You should know how it works. If you have a problem with a particular statement in that 1,000 line of code, let's say you don't understand 3 or 4 lines, that is acceptable. If you say, I don't understand those 1,000 lines, so it means you need to go back to school. So you need to restart all of my lectures, and you need to understand what is Python and what are the basic definitions and everything. So I will conclude my today's session here. So I'm just telling you, you can read whatever books you want, and you can search on the Google, whatever. There is GitHub, there are other websites, Stack Overflow, that people come there, they help other people. But most of the times I see people, they are asking stupid questions because they're asking, well, how can I make a calculator, or how can I write that function or write that? No, nobody will help you. You have to be very specific on your questions. So you should learn the usage of the Python documentation available on their website. That will be all for today. Have a good day till next session.